Hello everybody, my name is Tawqir Zafar and today I'll be discussing with you the question paper of 2021 mains exam of the section History of India and the World. So let us see the trend analysis first of all of the last, you can say, 5 years paper. Because see, in History of India and World there are three sections: Indian heritage and culture, history of modern India before independence, history of modern India after independence, and world history. So these two sections are of modern India, one is of culture and one is of world history. And we see the trend analysis from 2017 to 2021. And if we try to understand this year in 2021, we see that out of 250 marks, 75 marks questions is being asked this year from History of India and the World. One question from culture, 3 questions from modern India, that is before independence, and 1 question from modern India after independence, that is the post-independence section, and world history 1 question, 15 marks. So 75 marks. From the last 4 years we see from 2018, 2019, 20 and 21, 75 marks. 2017 they asked 85 marks question. If we see the trend analysis for the last, if you try to follow the trend analysis of the last 15-20 years, they have a bit reduced the section of history, though they asked this year very easy question from history. So this is the graph. This has become a bit stable. So they keep, asking 75 marks question out of 250 marks in GS paper 1. Okay. After this trend analysis, I told you that the question that was being asked in the main exam held on 8th January on Saturday, and the history section of the exam was very easy, and we'll try to understand the question and their answers, suitable answers for these questions that was being asked in the exam. So the question is, the first question, 215 marks, and this was of 250 words, 15 marks. The question is, there arose a serious challenge to democratic state system between the two world wars. Evaluate the statement. See, if you try to understand, this question is connected to the topic of world history. And the topic is world between two world wars. And when I taught in the classes, in the offline and online classes, in fact mainly in online, because offline started for some time and again we switched over to online only. So there we covered this thing. This is connected to the development after First World War, that is the rise of totalitarian state or authoritarian state. Totalitarian state system in the interwar period, that is the period between the two world wars. So it is a very easy question. The totalitarian state system in this connection was rise of fascism and Nazism. Though the totalitarian state also rose in Russia when there was dictatorship of the communist regime, and there was dictatorship that rose in Italy under Mussolini, in the name of fascism, and another variant of fascism was Nazism, which developed under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. So this totalitarian system is very different from the democracy, and democracy was basically developing after the First World War. So in the wake of the First World War, democracy received a great boost. Okay, and in most of the countries, monarchies were abolished. After the First World War, the monarchies abolished in several countries, and there were development of some kind of popular representation or representative assemblies, or you can say democratic electorates, universal suffrage, or a responsible kind of a government. Most of the European countries adopted a republican system of the government. So we can say from the period when First World War ended, the First World War ended in 1918, and from 1919 to 1929, democracy made a remarkable progress all over the world. However, we see that this trend did not last for long, and in the next decade, we see that Europe witnessed the rise of totalitarian, dictatorship under the different names and in different forms. Okay, so we try to understand that what happened after First World War and what were the reasons for the rise of this totalitarian system and how it is different from a democratic setup. See, after the First World War, we see that humiliating, treatment, meted out to Germany by Treaty of Versailles, and it created a sense of hatred, or you can say revenge, amongst the Germans. The Treaty of Versailles had the element of revenge, and that revenge was taken by France. See, after First World War, there was Paris Peace Conference, and in Paris Peace Conference, the victor of the First World War, that is Britain, France and US, they assembled. Italy was also invited, and there it was decided that Germany was responsible for war and Germany will be punished, in which France wanted Germany to be punished. So the 5 treaties emanated from Paris Peace Conference, and the most important treaty was Treaty of Versailles. That was a unilateral treaty, and Germany was put on a point blank range, and Germany was signed this humiliating treaty, in which Germany did not get anything. The loss was inflicted on Germany. There was loss of prestige, there was economic crisis, and the treaty had mutilated Germany, physically humiliated her, emotionally suffocated her economically, and territorial loss was there on Germany. So different types of economic crisis and loss of prestige was there in Germany. So obviously Hitler was the person who exploited these sentiments to establish a dictatorship in Germany. At the same time, see, Germany, there was rise of dictatorship, and it was a kind of totalitarian state system. I will come to totalitarian state system later. And in Italy also, because see, Italy participated on the side of the, you can say, Italy participated on the side of Triple Entente, on the side of Britain and France. And Italy was promised with territorial gains. But when Italy participated after the First World War in Paris Peace Conference in 1919, she did not get anything. And Orlando, who participated on behalf of Italy, had to leave the Paris Peace Conference in the midway. So there was loss of prestige and economic crisis for Italy also, because Italy participated on the side of Triple Entente through Treaty of London that was signed in 1915, that is 1915. So the humiliating treaty was meted out to Germany, and the treatment given to Italy also, which was not tolerated by the people of Italy. So Italy had to face, poverty, discontent, disorder, and Italian leaders, they felt that though they had, was on the side of the Britain and France, even then they were not treated well. So this was not going down the throat of the people, and there was rise of a leader called as Benito Mussolini, and he was the person who established a totalitarian rule in Italy. And this type of totalitarian rule was totally, not in consonance with democratic system. It was against that. Democratic system was, gaining momentum after First World War, but it was short-lived. So that is why you see the question says, there arose a serious challenge to democratic state system between the two world wars. Two world war period is from 1919 to 1939. 1939, the Second World War began. Okay, then there was rise of Japan also. That was also a very important development, and which was not liked by America and the European countries. So the rising of Japan or militarism of Japan was also not liked by and there was some kind of military leadership that was also developing in Japan in the form of, you can say, totalitarian regime. In Russia also we see that the communist leaders were, determined to spread the communism all over the world. They crushed, all anti-revolutionary forces within the country with, firm hand, and, they tried to promote communism in other countries of the world by restoring all types of, method. So there was totalitarian kind of a system that was growing in Italy, in Germany, in Japan, in Russia, which was not in consonance, which was not in tune with democratic system which was developed from the Western world. So that is why they asked the question that there was a serious challenge to democratic state system between the two world wars. This is a very important thing that we need to understand. Secondly, that worldwide, economic depression that was going on from 1929 to 1932. And this worldwide economic depression caused the enormous, hardship and suffering to the people. And, it gave rise to the kind of frustration, or, you can say that despair among the people. And, the people were, were not happy with this kind of development that was there in the First World War, after the First World War period. So they were searching for some other option. They wanted a strong leadership, especially in the country like Germany and Italy. They wanted a leader like Hitler or Mussolini, so that they had some hope from these leaders, so that they can improve their economy and increase the prestige of, or raise the prestige of their country, which was, lost after the First World War. So, and lastly, the failure of League of Nations. See, League of Nations was formed after the First World War, and it was the result of the Paris Peace Conference. And League of Nations was a failed organization, and it could not control the, it could not control the rising Japan. It could not control the totalitarian system that was growing in Italy and in Germany and in Russia. And it failed to control even Second World War. So even this, since the League of Nations was a very, you can say, frail and fragile kind of an institution, it could not control this rising spirit of totalitarianism. So this is a very important thing. So totalitarian state system that rose after the First World War, and in this kind of state system, and the two very good example of totalitarian state system is fascism and Nazism. Fascism in Italy and Nazism in Germany. So this totalitarian state system, what happens when the people are dictated, and they are dictated for the total behavior, everything everything, the people are dictated with, that whom to vote, what to read, what not to read, which we do not find in democracy. Democracy, there is freedom. Two very important principles of democracy is freedom, rights, social justice. These are very important ingredients. Where freedom is there, dissent is there, where there is a very strong opposition is there. In this kind of totalitarian system, we do not have any kind of opposition. So when there is the people are dictated, and there is a form of one leader, one party, and one strong leader, one party, and one type of ideology that dominates, in which people are dictated to follow the policies of the party. And in case if they refuse to follow, or if they criticize that government, they are threatened for death also. So in this case, the state becomes very important. State machinery becomes very important. And everything is within the state and nothing is outside the state. This is the spirit of the totalitarian system, where democracy is nothing. The democracy goes to dog. There is nothing, something like, popular sovereignty or republicanism or citizenship or something like that, when state plays a very important role. See, the government of totalitarian state had full control on economic aspects of the nation. Russia had, already nationalized the industries, capturing the mills and, the factories by, putting an end to the private enterprises. And in Germany, we see Italy, we see that capitalists, breathe before capitalism was promoted. But yes, again, authoritarianism was there in Russia also, in Italy also, in Germany also. But the difference is what? That in Russia, capitalism was not promoted, communism was promoted, and there was some kind of dictatorship of communism. So in this totalitarian system, state becomes a very important authority. State. And the classic example of this totalitarian state system is Nazism and fascism. Nazism in Germany, which was one of the variant of fascism, and fascism developed in Italy. So there was a serious challenge to the democratic spirit in the in the post First World War period, when the government of Stalin in Russia and Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany, they were totally against the democratic system. Totally against the democratic system. They could not tolerate any democratic institutions. There was opposition to democracy. There was belief in dictatorship. There was, belief in a powerful dictatorships. There was the individual liberty has no meaning. Individual liberty cannot claim any, individual cannot claim any liberty or right against the state. State is above, individual is below. So this kind of state system develops. In democracy, what happens? Individual, people are above, people's rule, for the people, by the people, of the people. Here, state becomes very important. Here, one party becomes very important. Here, in democracy, multiple party, they have the chance to, form the government. They have the right to dissent. But in the case of totalitarian system, we do not see such things. Then, there is also a kind of racial superiority, especially the fascists, believed in the concept of racial superiority. And according to them, race which were superior had every right to govern the inferior race. This is the view of the fascist. So in the interwar period or after the First World War period, we see such type of development in Italy, Germany and Russia, Japan, that there is an authoritarian kind of a government that is developing. In today's time also, if you try to compare, today also there is the development of authoritarian kind of a system. which we are seeing in different parts of the world. If you read the current affair and the newspaper, you will see that these things keep coming. There is a rise of strong leadership, like it was there in the case of Italy and Germany in the past. So we see such development that was there in the totalitarian system, in which there is one party rule, opposition to democracy, glorification of a leader, okay, opposition to the parliamentary form of a government, no place for individual, or glorification of the state, superiority of the glorification of superior race. All these are seen in the case of the totalitarian system. That is why they asked the question, there arose a serious challenge to democratic system. Between the two world wars, evaluate the statement. If these points you write down, no one can stop you to get, around 65% marks in this type of question. So I hope that, this question is clear to you, and it is a very easy question. जिसने भी ये वर्ल्ड बिटवीन टू वर्ल्ड वॉर्स पढ़ा होगा वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में, when I was taking the class, I have discussed in-depth analysis was there on this, and these type of questions also we tried to do in the class, and not exactly this but somewhat similar to these type of questions that we did in the class. So this is a very easy question that is coming from the world between the two world wars, from the topic of world history. So let us see this was the first question that I discussed with you that was asked in the exam. Let us see the second question. Trace the rise and growth of socio-religious reform movement with special reference to Young Bengal and Brahma Samaj. Answer in 150 words. And this was of 10 marks. Very easy. I told you this year they asked a very easy question. Only one question you can say was a bit tricky, that I will tell you. Trace the rise and growth of social. This question is coming from the topic where I taught you revolts and movement. This was the name of the topic in modern India. And always I used to tell in the class, see, I used to tell that there are two revolts which are very important. Revolt of 1857 and the socio-religious reform movement. These two topics are very important. Every year you see the question in the PT or in the main exam. So the question has two things. One is the trace the rise and growth. That is, they are asking the factors of social religious reform movement with special reference to Young Bengal and Brahma Samaj. Young Bengal movement of Henry Vivian Desrosiers and Brahma Samaj of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. These two are a very important development that has happened. So we'll try to, unfold it. See, with the establishment of, the British rule in India, there was a spread of, colonial culture, and, which exposed a serious drawbacks in the Indian society. This also, created a new awakening. So what has happened? See, four things that you have to remember when you try to answer this portion, the rise and growth. One, that there were religious and social evils that was existing in the 19th century in India. Second is the colonial, dominance was there. That is, colonial hegemony was there. And the third thing is the efforts made by the leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Swami Vivekanand. All these people were playing a very significant role in, highlighting the problems of the society and making the people aware that what is reality and what is not reality. So the British, took a great advantage of this. The third thing that you need to remember and write in the exam, should have written, the students who have studied. The third thing one should remember is the revival of or digging the old culture. And in this sense, there is a kind of Renaissance that was developing. The Indian form of Renaissance or Bengal Renaissance or Indian Renaissance. And in this, Raja Ram Mohan Roy played a very important role. And his institution, Brahma Samaj, that I'll come to later. So, and the fourth thing, taking the best of the West and throwing the bad. It is not that neglecting everything from the West, taking the best of the West and, mixing it with, fusing it with the best of the East. So first highlighting the problems of the society, social problems, whether it is sati or prohibition of widow remarriage or, caste rigidity or dominance of the complex rituals and practices or obscurantism, religious obscurantism, unorthodoxy, hyper-conservatism, all these kind of things. Exploitation of women, they were confined to domestic household work, they were not exposed to education or progressive ideals. So, then, breaking all these problems, ending all these problems will create, especially the caste rigidity, will create some kind of social unification or social harmony that will result into economic unification and finally into political unification and political integration of India. Taking the best of the West is, the progressive ideals, especially the spirit of freedom that developed from American Revolution, the spirit of French Revolution, liberty, equality and fraternity, and the lofty ideals of the philosophers like John Locke or Rousseau or Kant or Voltaire, Montesquieu, etc., and developing an ideological base for the national movement. And later on, reviving the best of the old system, that is rebirth of old system. That is the real culture of India, going back to Vedas and stuff, and the other things like that, and then revival of the old in the form of Indian Renaissance. So all these things were developing. So you need to write there that with the establishment of the British rule in India, there spread the colonial culture, and which exposed the serious drawbacks in Indian society, and this has created the background for new awakening. So while a large number of Indians refuse to accept the Western culture, other progressive kind of leaders, they were willing to accept it. They wanted the Western lofty ideals, especially the age of enlightenment that developed in 18th century in Europe, which has already impacted the European life. So the modern ideas like democracy, nationalism, rationality, scientific outlook has propelled Europe as a civilization par excellence. And in context of India, in this you can say in contrast to this, India presented a picture of decadent society and a stagnant civilization. And as a result of this, British always used to portray their culture and their civilization as best. And this was not liked by the Indian leaders. Because the British rulers in India, they considered themselves culturally more advanced and racially superior. This produced a diverse reaction in Indian society. This has produced a great reaction in Indian society, and this gave the rise of Neo-Hinduism or new kind of Hinduism. And the prophets of Neo-Hinduism were Swami Vivekananda and his Guruji, His Guruji's name was Paramhans, Ramakrishna Paramhans. So these scholars, they were liking the Eastern culture. They were they were the propagator of the Eastern culture, but at the same time they also accepted the West of the West. So accepting best of East and West means that individuals like Raja Ram Mohan Roy showed a more mature reaction, and they were certainly attracted by the Western ideas and values, but at the same time they refused to break away from their own religion. This is the beauty of the great reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Swami Vivekanand or the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and others. So the rise of Neo-Hinduism, yet another reaction, which was a denial of the Western superiority. And in this, the person who questioned the Western superiority was Swami Vivekanand. He was the first person who questioned the Western superiority, and his famous speech in Chicago in the Parliament of Religion was applauded in the newspaper that time, and it was a historic speech in which he glorified the Indian culture, which was the worldwide famous thing that has happened in the past, and it has elevated India at the top of the world. So this has given a great boost. So that is why you see the question says that the rise and growth of socio-religious reform movement. That means the question setter asks about the reason for the rise of socio-religious reform movement. रीजंस, यही क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है आपसे कि क्या वजह है जो सोशल रिलीजियस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट का राइज हुआ है. ट्रेस द राइज एंड ग्रोथ. दैट मीन्स व्हाई इट हैपेंड. This is the question that you have to answer with, and you have to highlight these things. So there are factors. One is the British conquest of India and the impact. See, British conquest exposed, serious drawbacks in Indian society, and it occasioned a new awakening. While, a large number of Indians, refused to accept the Western ideas, others, gradually came to hold that India lagged behind in the race of civilization. Spread of colonial culture and the challenges, that is colonial cultural and ideological hegemony that was challenging the Indian culture. Religious and social condition that was developing in India, that was the root cause for such development that has happened in India. And the scholars, the reformers, the social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others, they rose up and challenge such evil things that was developing in the society, whether in the form of social or religious aspect. That is the role of enlightened Indians. See, the British conquest of India also gave rise to the factors that the nationalist sentiments also was rising. The great leaders also was rising. They were also playing a very important role. Like it is said, that Swami Vivekanand was the father of Indian nationalism. 7 to 8 times they were asked in the question in the previous paper of the mains exam, that in the optional also, in history optional paper, that how he was the father of the Indian nationalism. So the British conquest of India gave rise to the factors such as growth of nationalistic sentiments, emergence of new economic forces, spread of education like modern education or scientific education or English education, and created awareness about the world affairs, and that has created or contributed significantly in the rise of the 19th century socio-religious reform movement. And in this type of socio-religious reform movement, you need to understand that, Raja Ram Mohan Roy is considered as father of modern India. He played a very important role. तो पहले तो आप फैक्टर्स बताइए, उसके बाद देन कम टू ब्रह्म समाज और यंग बंगाल. Especially you should start with Raja Ram Mohan Roy only, that how Raja Ram Mohan Roy is regarded as the father of modern India. Don't write about it, because see, the words are very less here. And just for explanation, so that you can develop a concept about it. See, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he laid the foundation of the modern reform movement. He was the person who started it. He was the pioneer. He was the foremost socio-religious reformer and was considered as father of modern India. So, a scholar of English, French, Greek, Hebrew, Latin, and different languages, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was well acquainted with Hindu philosophy, philosophical thoughts of Jainism and other things. He was a person who has carried out several social, religious and political reforms, especially his work against sati and the passing of abolition of Sati Act in 1829 by William Bentinck was the most, commendable work done by him. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy played a very important role, and his very great contribution was the foundation of Brahma Samaj. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was the person who created a background, who created an institution, Brahma Samaj. And Brahma Samaj played a very important role in carrying out the social and religious reforms. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was considered as the morning star of reform movement in the country. And he was the first leader of modern India who contributed, nearly in every aspect of Indian life. इसीलिए उनको father of modern India कहा जा रहा है. That is why he is considered. And Brahma Samaj was his greatest contribution. Though in reform, sati, abolition of sati, was the most important contribution of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Brahma Samaj was founded in 1828. Originally, Brahma Samaj was originally founded as Brahma Sabha by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1828. And the Brahma Samaj was first reform movement of India, based on modern Western ideas. Its primary, purpose was to teach monotheism, that is, believe in one God, and, get rid of the evils of Hinduism. That the evils, what were the evils? What were the evils of Hinduism that developed, or the concocted or interpolated or fabricated ideas that developed? Okay, so to remove such ideas, such evil ideas, in fact. So incorporating the best teaching of all the religions and, fusing it with Western ideas, Brahma Samaj, emerged as a powerful platform for the promotion of humanism and, social regeneration. And, Brahma Samaj carried out various religious and, social reforms. So you have to confine yourself, just write 2 to 3 lines about Raja Ram Mohan Roy and switch over to Brahma Samaj. That his institutional development, the top institutional development was Brahma Samaj. Then you write about some religious reform that, Brahma Samaj played a notable, role in, cleaning or cleansing Hinduism of, evil practices. Brahma Samaj was opposed to, entire Brahmanical system that was based on, superstitious practices and rituals. You have to write that, it discarded, the infallibility of religious scriptures, idol worship and polytheism, all these kind of concept of Avatarvad, that is incarnation. And, it criticized various, the dominance of priestly classes, the complex rituals and practices. Brahma Samaj believed in unity of one God. Brahma Samaj was, bringing the new ideas which was based on the light of reason, based on ideas which is tested by reason. Okay, so Brahma Samaj, you have to write few things. कि religious reforms क्या है, social reforms, Brahma Samaj, you have to write that these reformers were against the reforms were against the social evils in the present society of that time. It has condemned, caste system, untouchability, and supported the upliftment of the women. How it was playing a role. How Raja Ram Mohan Roy played a very important role against the evils like sati. They actively, opposed sati and child marriage or polygamy, such things. How they raised the voice for the widow remarriage and incorporated the women in the mainstream line, and they made a tireless effort in the field of widow remarriage and the modern education of women. So these things you need to write there. You don't have to further write that is the after Raja Ram Mohan Roy's death in 1833, how Brahma Samaj got broke and stuff like that, split of Brahma Samaj into Adi Brahma Samaj and Brahma Samaj of India and then Sadharan Brahma. You don't have to write, just reforms, that also in 2 to 3 points, religious reforms and the social reforms. Then again switch over to writing that there was another great personality whose name was Henry Vivian Desrosiers. Henry Vivian Desrosiers was an Anglo-Indian teacher of Hindu college, and he drew inspiration from French Revolution, and he followed the most radical views of his time, and he was a free thinker and a rationalist, and his followers were called as Desrosians. He was very critical of the orthodoxy or conservatism. He was a charismatic teacher. He taught his he taught his student to develop a critical thinking or critical outlook and question all authority and spread love and liberty and freedom. So Desrosiers was considered as Henry Vivian Desrosiers was considered as the first nationalist poet of modern India. So his followers were known as Desrosians or Young Bengal, and the movement that was followed was called as Young Bengal movement. What did this Young Bengal movement? You have to write there that it attacked on old and decadent customs and traditions of Hindu society, and it was against hyper conservatism and ultra orthodoxy. The Desrosians, the followers of this movement, were stood for women's right and laid great stress on female education. So they followed they carried out the social reforms, they carried out the religious reforms also. So you have to mention such points here. But the movement saw limited success due to lack of support for their advanced ideas and their impractical radicalism that developed. And finally, in 1831, how Desrosiers was dismissed from Hindu college because of his radicalism, in fact, and he died of cholera soon after the young age of 22. And this movement also got subsided with the passage of time. So but it played a very significant role. तो ये आराम से आप लिख सकते हैं 150 वर्ड में, बहुत सारा आपके पास क्वेश्चन ये है. When I was doing in the class, जैसे पिछले क्वेश्चन में मैंने बताया कि जब ये क्वेश्चन कराया था, ये पूरा का पूरा लिखाया हुआ था क्लास नोट्स में मैंने और समझाया था. Here also the same thing. These are very simple thing that was discussed in the class and was given in the notes. Okay, so the next question. Evaluate the nature of Bhakti literature and its contribution to Indian culture. See, this question comes from, this is a question of Bhakti movement, and it is a part of culture. I teach it in culture, Indian art and culture. The question is the nature of, first part of the question is nature. Nature of Bhakti literature. Second is the contribution of Bhakti literature to Indian culture. This is a question of Bhakti movement, and the Bhakti literature is the consequence or the result of this Bhakti movement. मतलब Bhakti movement हुआ, and that we study in, this we study in Indian art and culture. So Bhakti movement was a noteworthy movement that has happened in the medieval times. And the most important, you can say that one of the most important impact of the Bhakti movement that you have to write. See, two things you have to discuss in the question. One, you have to write about little bit about Bhakti movement, and immediately you switch over writing that one of the major impact of the Bhakti movement was the rise and growth of Bhakti literature. Then you discuss the nature of the Bhakti literature, giving some reference, giving some examples, and then you write contribution to Indian culture. So one of the important impact of Bhakti movement was the rise of Bhakti literature. And much of the credit must be given to the reformers of that time, who played a significant role, in the development of vernacular languages, especially, Tamil, Telugu, or Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Marathi, all these languages. So they played a very important role in the development of such languages. The theme of, the Bhakti enriched the literary stock of these languages, and it provided a new line of literature which was based on progressive ideas. See, Bhakti movement was against the religious and the social evils that was developing in that time, and it was against the dominance of priestly class and the complex rituals and practices, and it aimed to end the caste rigidity. So obviously the literature will also have such things. So a new kind of literature that was developing. So because of Bhakti movement, the reformers who were writing, the writings of these reformers gave rise to such literature which were called as Bhakti literature. For example, two notable scholars like Surdas and Tulsidas made an invaluable contribution towards the enrichment of Hindi literature, and that was done in the second half of 16th century and in the first quarter of, in fact, the 17th century. And it gave a detailed information about the such development, and it has the idea of progressive ideas of that time. So Bhakti movement gave impetus to the literature that developed in that period into different languages. So if we need to understand the nature of the Bhakti literature, we need to understand the nature of Bhakti movement also. That how it defines the unity of God and the personal devotion. How there are two streams of Bhakti, that is Saguna and Nirguna. Saguna is with attributes and Nirguna is without attributes. So two types of things or two streams that is developing through this bhakti. Bhakti is based on, bhakti literature, it was based on egalitarian principles. Bhakti literature, focuses on religious equality. And religious equality or giving respect to all religion. And everyone has the right to worship to all, or equal access to God, which was negated in those times. That is why they used to write. The reforms were written in the form of literature, and that gave a boost to such literature. So religious equality was the core aspect of bhakti literature. Negation of caste and social hierarchy by various saints, that was the core aspect of the bhakti literature. Negation of religious formalism or ritualism or complex ritual practices was the core aspect of bhakti literature. Negation of Brahmanical superiority in the religious matter, or you can say the simplicity in the form of worship, or reformist character of the movement, or the unorthodox in character, or you can say representing a heterodox or non-conformist character, non-conformist character of the movement. So it showed a broad religious perspective. It showed a broad religious attitude. Bhakti literature expresses the pro-people orientation. It created the humanistic and democratic approaches. It was based on, it gives the idea of the harmonizing the spiritual life and the worldly life. It was you can say the new approach to spiritualism. These type of things. So the saints who were writing, they gave rise to such literature. There was rise of vernacular languages, and there was growth of different languages. Beside their writing emerged as a new form of literature, and which expresses the sentiments of bhakti or devotion towards God. It has played a very important role, these literature has played a very important role in creating social and religious harmony. It has played a very important role in unity of Hindu and Muslim, synthesizing the Indo-Islamic cultural traits. It was an expression of pluralism. It was an expression of syncretism. It was an expression of the rejection of the monocultural domination. It was the product of sharing and fusing over the time. So all these development that was there in this kind of literature. It has impacted architecture, it has impacted painting, it has impacted music, it has impacted dressing style, it has impacted festivals that is being celebrated like Shab-e-Barat in Muslims, and how Muharram taking processions were carried, Tazia and all that kind of things that developed. How these cultures are influencing Hindus and Muslims, that is being expressed in literature, and how it is giving rise to same. इसके साथ साथ मैं आपको बता रहा हूं how it is giving rise to new form of Indian culture, a new form of Indian culture. This is a very important thing that developed. So the leaders of Bhakti movement, added to literature. There is a very famous leader, Namdev, for example. He wrote in Marathi, but some of his Hindi songs are also found in Grantha. Some hymns were composed by Ramananda. Some sayings were composed by Kabir in Sakhis, Ramanis. So in different languages, different forms such things were written. For example, Guru Nanak Dev also, composed some hymns which were the mixture of Hindi and Punjabi. Songs of Mirabai was in Hindi are very famous. So such development we can see in the form of Bhakti literature. These, see, in the views of Dr. Yusuf Hussain writes a great deal on Bhakti movement and Sufi movement. See, he says that, Bhakti movement of, medieval India represents a very important, progressive development. The Bhakti movement of medieval India represents the first effective, impringement on Hindu society, on Islamic culture and outlook. But it received, great impetus from the presence of the Muslims in this country. So he writes how Bhakti is influencing Sufi and how Sufi is influencing Bhakti. This is creating a kind of composite culture in the society. This is the uniqueness of the movement that is developing. So there is a rise of cultural influence. Bhakti movement, he says that Bhakti movement led to common languages and, becoming popular. Common languages becoming popular, and, the saints and poets, and they composed works in many regional languages. The language of Kabir is a good example, in this context, which is a mixture of many languages. जिसको हम लोग खिचड़ी भी कहते हैं, खिचड़ी बन गया. Malik Muhammad Jaisi, he is also has writing in different languages. Goswami Tulsidas composed, the works in Awadhi. Surdas adopted Brij language, Brij Bhasha. Guru Nanak used Hindi, Punjabi. So there is rise of different languages also. It gave impetus to different languages. This is the beauty of such development. So Yusuf Hussain writes a great deal in this. M.G. Ranade also, writes about Bhakti movement. He says that, the main results of the Bhakti movement were the development of vernacular language, the modification of the caste system, and, the sanctification of the family life, elevation of the status of women, spread of the humanity and, tolerance. So in this you have to write the nature, and then you have to write the development of such culture, कि आखिर क्या ऐसी बात हुई, क्या ऐसा कल्चर डेवलप हो गया है इंडिया में भक्ति लिटरेचर की वजह से. कॉम्पोजिट कल्चर का डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है. दिस इज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट डेवलपमेंट कि किस तरह से कॉम्पोजिट कल्चर डेवलप किया है, जो मैंने आपको बताया. किस तरह से हिंदू मुस्लिम यूनिटी डेवलप किया है, किस तरह से देयर वाज अ चैलेंज ऑन ऑर्थोडॉक्सी, हाइपर ऑर्थोडॉक्सी और अल्ट्रा कंजर्वेटिज्म, हाउ इट गेव राइज टू द things like, different literature, architecture, music, etc. How Bhakti is influencing Sufi, how Sufi is influencing Bhakti. Tara Chand also writes a great detail in this. The influence of both the culture, the Indian culture is basically the Hindu culture and the Muslim culture together. This is what you have to write in the contribution to the Indian culture. How Bhakti literature created a contribution to Indian culture. So it is very easy. It is not a difficult. Anyone who knows little bit example about the Bhakti literature, and he knows about the nature and character of the Bhakti movement, he will be effectively writing this question. And in the Twin Drive course also I have discussed about it, about the Bhakti movement and especially the impact of Bhakti movement. One of the impact is the rise of Bhakti literature. तो composite culture के बारे में लिखिए, ठीक है. This is a very important thing, which is basically establishment of pluralism or rejection of monocultural domination, or the development of syncretism, or it was the product of sharing and fusing the two cultures over the time. So इस तरह की चीजें इसमें आपको नोट करनी होंगी. तो दिस वाज अ वेरी इजी क्वेश्चन. तो आप देखिए तीनों क्वेश्चन में आप अगर देखें, कोई ये क्वेश्चन वेरी इजी वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में हम लोगों ने किया. ये क्वेश्चन देखिए आप, बहुत इजी क्वेश्चन है, ये भी हम लोगों ने मॉडर्न इंडिया में किया, सोशलिस्ट रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट में. ये क्वेश्चन आप देखिए भक्ति लिटरेचर, दिस ऑल्सो वी डिड इन कल्चर बट नॉट डायरेक्टली, यस, but indirectly we did it in the impact of the Bhakti movement. So 3 questions are very easy. अभी देखते हैं आगे और कौन सा क्वेश्चन है इसमें करने के लिए. Next question. Assess the main administrative issues and socio-cultural problems in the integration process of Indian princely state. This is a question of post-independence. पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस का ये क्वेश्चन है, और ये हम लोगों ने पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस में एक टॉपिक है इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ नेटिव स्टेट्स, उसमें हम लोगों ने डिटेल में किया है. और ये क्वेश्चन, दिस इज रिलेटेड टू बेसिकली द प्रॉब्लम्स इन इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ नेटिव स्टेट्स. इसका ये क्वेश्चन है जो कि एक बहुत इजी और आसान क्वेश्चन है. This is a very easy question that we have done. So let us see the next question. As I told you, assess the main administrative issue and socio-cultural problems in the integration process of the Indian princely state, that is integration of native state. What were the important problem that was faced by India in the integration of native states? See, after independence, there were several problems that India faced. That is, one of the major problem was how to integrate these princely states, and the role of integration of this princely state was given to Patel and V.K. Menon. Patel played a very efficient role. He used the policy of carrot and stick. He was an Iron Man of India, and he used the policies, strategy, and his iron will, and he integrated the different scattered princely states of India. So whatever you see, the map of political map of India is only because of Patel's efficiency, how he integrated the native states. So he was called as Bismarck of modern India. How Bismarck integrated Germany or unified Germany by using his realist policies and strategies. The same way Patel also did and integrated the native states. He used 2 important things, especially that was incorporated by V.K. Menon. That was instrument of accession and the standstill agreement. So we need to understand, see how you have to write. The question asks what are the problem. They do not ask the role of Patel. So here what you have to write, that there was existence of 562 big and small native states at the time of independence. And these native states were not the part of British India, but they existed as subordinate political units under the British paramountcy. Because see, British India has the provinces, and India has British provinces and the native state, which were not directly under the control of the British, but they are under, or you can say they are the subordinate political units under the British paramountcy. So this was one of the problem, that they were not being under the direct control of the British. Number 1 problem, because they ask you assess the main administrative issue, that is problem, and socio-cultural problems. Second problem that you need to write here is that under the partition plan, there was a partition plan, and they were the native states, the 562 big and small native states were given three options. One, that they will be the part of India with their discretion. Second, that they will become the part of Pakistan. And the third, that they will remain free. See, if they become the part of Pakistan and if they become free, remain free, these were the major challenges for us, for Patel. कि अब ये अगर इंडिया के साथ नहीं रहेंगे, पाकिस्तान के साथ चले गए या इंडिपेंडेंट रहे, तो दो ये जो मुख्य चैलेंज है ये हमारे लिए खतरनाक. See, if they become the part of India or if they become the part of Pakistan, these two were on the basis of geographical contiguity, these two options. See, the second and the third option, that is when they become the part of Pakistan or if they remain free. The second and the third, the first option is to be the part of India. The second and the third option, emerged as a major issue for India. And there, integration into the Indian Union become a major issue. So the problems were what? Geographically, the native states were scattered. क्या थे? क्या problems थी? Geographically, native states were scattered. Scattered थी. This is a very important challenge. एक साथ नहीं थी. Then the another challenge was that there were divergent, hostile and divergent approaches of the rulers. Hostile and divergent approaches of the ruler. This was another thing. See, the Congress had, supported the Prajamandal movement. Prajamandal movement was going on during the time of, freedom struggle. There was a movement. Praja is the people of the native states. So the people's movement that was going on in the princely states, and this movement was against the undemocratic or absolute monarchical system of the king of that time and the British rule. The Congress had the moral and ethical support before Quit India movement. In Quit India movement, Congress movement, Quit India movement and Prajamandal movement finally merged. So Congress had supported Prajamandal movement, and the attitude of many rulers to Congress was not good. It was hostile. So this was another problem, that hostility of rulers against Congress leaders, because Congress supported the Prajamandal movement, and Prajamandal movement was against the dominance of the rulers. It was a movement of Praja. Praja is people. Then the next thing was that there was clash between the approaches of the rulers and opinion of the people. That is the subject. There is a very good example to it, that in the case of Junagadh, the people were having the opinion to join India, and the people and the ruler of Junagadh was they wanted to be the part of Pakistan. So the clash between the opinion or approaches of the ruler of the native state and the opinions of the subject of the people of that particular native state, ये जो क्लैश हो रहा था, ये जो क्लैश बिटवीन रूलर एंड पीपल, मतलब इन दोनों के अप्रोच में जो क्लैश हो रहा था, ये भी एक स्टम्बलिंग ब्लॉक था. This was also a stumbling block. Very important, administrative issues. So there was such problem that was existing. Another problem was that there was no strong and effective, forum or group. There was no institution so that, these issues, these disputes should be resolved. So there was no very strong and effective forum, though there was, Chamber of Princes that was existing, in which, which was a very loose kind of a forum through which, Congress used to negotiate and try to resolve the issue. So these were the basic problems, administrative problems. Another problem that you have to must write in the exam, that many rulers, wanted to retain their sovereignty. This was a very important thing, that they wanted to retain their sovereignty. This was also a challenge for India in integration of the native states. And sovereignty, status, or privy purse, or privileges, all these kind of things that they wanted to retain. And this has challenged Patel. So Patel played a very important, a separate department was created, and that was called as Indian State Department in June 1947 for negotiating with the rulers for accession. The states signing the instrument of accession, and they will become the part of India or Pakistan. So Patel was the president of such department, and Menon was the secretary of that department. Menon had already put forwarded a plan of accession in May 1946, and this plan was accession on the basis of surrender of the three subjects, like defense, external affair, and communication. So this plan was adopted, and it was considered as a valid basis for accession. So Menon, as a secretary, he played a very important role. He prepared two important documents, and these documents were called as the Instrument of Accession and Standstill Agreement. You don't have to write about Instrument of Accession and Standstill Agreement. So out of 562 states, many joined India, and some of them joined Pakistan, and three were controversial, that was Junagadh, Kashmir, and Hyderabad. Later on, these states were also made the part of India, and in this, Patel played a very important role. So in this question, you have to focus in what were the important problems that was existing in the integration of such native states. So you have to write such problems. So the task of integrating these native states was very difficult. You have to write like this, because the states were having the political and socio-cultural identities, and they were existing in such, they were existing for hundreds of years, and this has created problems in integration. They were scattered and other things that I've discussed. So the main administrative issues and socio-cultural problems in integration of native state. Then lastly, you write that in these problems were solved by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and he played a very important role in integration of native state. Therefore, he was called as Bismarck of modern India. इस तरह से आप एंड कर दीजिएगा इसको. तो ये भी एक बहुत आसान क्वेश्चन है, बहुत डिफिकल्ट नहीं है. The next question is basically bring out the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. Answer in 250, that is 15 marks. अच्छा, इधर भी जो है ये 10 मार्क्स का था. इधर का तो मार्क्स बता ही दिया था मैंने, इधर भी 10 मार्क्स, ये भी 10 मार्क्स का है. ये क्वेश्चन आ रहा है आपका, मैंने जो कराया था मॉडर्न इंडिया में, राइज ऑफ गांधी एंड गांधीयन लीडरशिप. Basically, they ask you about the constructive program and you have to connect it with these movement, NCM and CDM. This was clearly discussed in the class. What are the important constructive programs of Mahatma Gandhi during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement? So it is again a very easy question, asked by यूपीएससी. यूपीएससी ने इसमें भी बहुत ही आसान सा क्वेश्चन पूछा है. देखिए इसमें क्या लिखना है आपको. इसमें आप लिखिए कि सी द इमर्जेंस ऑफ गांधी एज अ सुप्रीम लीडर इन द नेशनल स्ट्रगल was a very important development that has happened, and Gandhi used his techniques of mass mobilization. And one of the techniques of his mass mobilization was the constructive program. See, in the history of India's freedom struggle, Gandhi launched number of agitation and demonstration against the British rule. And he did it by pressurizing them to, initiate some changes. And that was the style of Gandhi. Gandhi's movement was, characterized by elements of change and continuity. He took the elements of moderates and he took the element of extremist as well. So, if you try to analyze, while some features of Gandhian movement were quite similar to those of moderates and extremists, and number of elements were quite new in Gandhian form. So if you try to analyze, just try to understand the background, how Gandhi has incorporated such ideas of constructive program, the constructive program that he used during the his first great movement, that was non-cooperation movement, which was based on the ideas of Gandhi, and civil disobedience movement again, which was based on the ideas of Gandhi. See, in the elements of continuity, you will see that it was a non-violent in character, egalitarian outlook, or you can say democratic outlook, progressives, secular, anti-colonial. It was both constitutional and extra constitutional. Then the change that Gandhi brought, which was different from previous revolts or the ideas of the previous leaders, that it was a true mass movement, and he used a technique of true struggle truce. In the truce period, he incorporated the constructive program, and which was well functioning in the time of non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement, so that he can run the his movement with consistency and with that enthusiasm, so that the strength and vigor of the movement is not lost. So he carried out such movements in a very different manner, and constructive program of Gandhi played a very significant role. Gandhi's movement, constructive program was an expression of Gandhi's ethical moral struggle, and it emphasized on using the right method for achieving the right objective. This was the beauty of Gandhi's movement. Gandhi's movement was characterized by active and passive phases. That is, active phases when the struggle goes on. In the truce phase, the constructive programs were used. During the active phases, the mass agitation was organized. During the passive phase, village reconstruction program was undertaken, Hindu-Muslim unity, health and hygiene, rural decentralization, khadi, charkha, all these kind of promotion of cottage and small scale industries, eradication of untouchability, all these kind of things were incorporated by Gandhi as a constructive program in the non-cooperation, or you can say civil disobedience movement. So we see different Swadeshi program. For example, popularization of Swadeshi and Khadi by reviving the hand spinning and hand weaving, establishment of the national schools and colleges, private, arbitration, uh, the private arbitration court that was known as panchayats all over India, rural decentralization, removal of untouchability and other, measures for Harijan welfare, emancipation and, upliftment of the women. So these were the things that was being carried out during the non-cooperation movement. Then, boycott programs were also there, like boycott of the government schools, colleges and courts, boycott of foreign goods, then, boycott of elections that was supposed to be held in the councils, which was the result of the Indian, Government of India Act of 1919, resignation from, nominated seats in the local bodies, surrender of titles, all these kind of things that was developing in that period. So Gandhi played a very important role in whether it is non-cooperation movement or whether it is, civil disobedience. In civil disobedience movement also you will see that, there was a defiance of salt laws, there was boycott of liquor, boycott of foreign clothes, British goods, of all kinds were boycotted, non-payment of taxes. But there is a difference between civil disobedience movement and the non-cooperation movement. The civil disobedience movement, was an extreme form of agitation. Non-cooperation movement is a mild form of agitation. The civil disobedience movement, involved non-payment of taxes and, the land revenue, as well as, violation or breaking of the laws, which is, different from non-cooperation. Non-cooperation is not cooperating with evil doers. ये इसका मेन मुद्दा होता है कि इसमें क्या चल रहा है. So constructive program becomes a very, very important thing of of Gandhi in civil disobedience and non-cooperation, movement. Civil disobedience or non-cooperation movement में constructive program plays a very, very important role. This you need to write. Now, you have to write that what are the important, features of this constructive program, which was used in non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement. For example, Hindu-Muslim unity, that is communal unity. Second is removal of untouchability. Third is, khadi and charkha. Fourth is, the development of cottage and small scale industries, as Gandhi was against massive industrialization. Fifth is, village sanitization. Sixth is, the new or you can say basic education. Then, adult education, upliftment of women, development of women, women empowerment, education, of health and hygiene. Then, the development of the provincial languages, national languages, economic equality. Khadi plays a very important role. Kisan plays a very important role. Kisan and working class are the two important, pillars of Gandhian movement. Development of Adivasis, development of, the students, incorporating students in the national movements, taking care of the lepers. So all these played a very important role. ये सारी चीजें जो हैं बहुत जबरदस्त रोल प्ले करी थी गांधी के पूरे सिस्टम में, गांधी के कंस्ट्रक्टिव प्रोग्राम में. तो एक चीज तो आपको ध्यान में रखना है कि भाई बेसिक एजुकेशन क्या है गांधी का. बेसिक एजुकेशन वाज आल्सो अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, डेवलपमेंट ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ गांधी. कि बेसिक एजुकेशन क्या है, इन विच देयर वाज फिजिकल डेवलपमेंट, there was spiritual development, there was intellectual development, there was different types of development that was, happening in Gandhian period. बेसिक एजुकेशन हो गया, खादी हो गया, चरखा हो गया, रूरल डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन हो गया, विमेन एम्पावरमेंट हो गया, ये सब चीज़ों को आपको हाईलाइट करना है, विच वॉज द पार्ट ऑफ गांधीयन प्रोग्राम. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ यू ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड, बस थोड़ा बहुत ज्ञान के लिए बता रहा हूं, if you try to understand khadi plays a very important role in Gandhi's life. Khadi gives the self reliance to the Indians. According to Gandhi, khadi became the emblem of nationalism. The economic function of khadi was what? To generate income for rural masses. The political function was promoting nationalism. The social function was focusing on the work, the dignity of the work, कि कोई काम जो है ऐसा नहीं है जिससे आप छोटा काम भी कर रहे हैं तो आपकी इज्जत चलेगी. गांधी वाज ऑफ दैट आइडिया. मोरल फंक्शन फॉर कल्टिवेटिंग qualities of self suffering, cultivating qualities of self suffering. So Gandhi visualized khadi as the basis and reflection of ahimsa. Gandhi was a person who gave importance to khadi. A genuine khadi weaver, khadi wearer in fact, will not speak a lie. This was Gandhi's idea कि जो खादी पहन रहा है वो झूठ नहीं बोलेगा. He will not commit violence. He will not be treacherous. He will not be impure. This is the idea of Gandhi. ये गांधी का आइडिया था ऑफ खादी. खादी किस तरह से फंक्शन कर रहा है. खादी just did not merely remain a cloth but a freedom costume. खादी पहनना, जैसे आप आईपीएस बन के वर्दी पहन लेंगे तो अपने आप में एक कितनी बड़ी बात. So khadi is, according to Gandhi, khadi just did not merely remain a cloth but a freedom costume. When you wear khadi, you have to be honest. Which whoever wears khadi, he propagated the way of life based on the ideals and the values. Acceptance of khadi, and acknowledgement of moral framework created the basis of khadi program in the freedom struggle of India. तो इस तरह से आपको आंसर में थोड़ा बहुत पॉइंट खादी के बारे में लिखिए, थोड़ा बहुत पॉइंट बेसिक एजुकेशन के बारे में लिखिए. खादी से क्या मिलता है? स्वदेशी. फॉर गांधी स्वदेशी was a theoretical term, but the real manifestation of Swadeshi is khadi. Khadi, therefore, according to Gandhi, was multi-use tool for education of people. Khadi makes the person self-reliant. Spinning of khadi, this plays a very important role. It creates a basis for decentralization or self-sufficiency in village economy. Such role was being played by khadi. Notion of khadi and village industries are important principle of Gandhi's life. The development of cottage and small scale industries, that is the basis of his socio-economic, political and moral doctrines. ये था, चाहे वो हैंड स्पिनिंग हो, खादी हो. और एक चीज गांधी मानते थे कि अगर आप हैंड स्पिनिंग जानते हैं या खादी जानते हैं, इट इज इजीली लर्नड. आसानी से आप सीख सकते हैं. It can be the readiest employment to those who have time and want to earn some money. खादी को बनाने के लिए कोई बहुत ज्यादा कोई कैपिटल की जरूरत है नहीं. It does not require a huge amount of capital. Okay, and at the same time जो खालीपन है लोगों का वो खत्म कर देता है खादी. खादी बनाइए, खादी बनेगा, कर चरखा चलेगा. ये सारी चीजें क्या थी? वो इकोनॉमिक, सोशल और पॉलिटिकल इम्प्लीकेशन था उसके कंस्ट्रक्टिव प्रोग्राम का, गांधीज कंस्ट्रक्टिव प्रोग्राम. Masses have no dislike for it. Powerful, tool of securing, cooperation among the masses. बहुत बड़ी बात है ना. तो खादी का एक अपना मुकाम है. इंडिविजुअल सेल्फ रिलायंस डेवलप कर देता है वो लोगों में. तो इस तरह की चीज आप बताइए. ओके. अनटचेबिलिटी के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई गांधी ने. बेसिक एजुकेशन की बात की गांधी ने. ठीक है, ये सब सारी चीजें. नेशनल लैंग्वेज की बात की. तो ये सब कब हो रहा था कंस्ट्रक्टिव प्रोग्राम? बेसिकली इन द ट्रूस पीरियड, सो दैट ही कैन सस्टेन द मूवमेंट. when the movement, non-cooperation movement, it declined because of the Chauri Chaura incident. After that, there was a void that was created. It was fulfilled by the constructive program. It was working as a fuel in the fire. So you have to write such things in this question. तो constructive program बताइए, नॉन कॉपरेशन के बारे में बताइए, सिविल डिसोबीडियंस के बारे में बताइए कि उस टाइम में किस तरह से सिविल डिसोबीडियंस मूवमेंट और नॉन कॉपरेशन मूवमेंट वर्क कर रहा था, किस तरह से कर रहा था, क्या आखिर ऐसी क्या चीज़ें डेवलप हो रही थी नॉन कॉपरेशन और सिविल डिसोबीडियंस मूवमेंट के टाइम में, कंस्ट्रक्टिव मूवमेंट का क्या रोल था. ये सारी चीज़ें आपसे वो एग्जाम में पूछ रहा है. तो आई थिंक ऑलमोस्ट अब एक क्वेश्चन बचता है, that is based on to what extent did, next question, this is the last question, 5 question we did, and this is the 6th question, which is again very easy question. We have discussed in the class also when we did in the online and offline class. To what extent did role of moderates prepare the base for the wider freedom movement? To what extent, question देखिए क्या बोल रहे हैं, to what extent रोल ऑफ मॉडरेट्स, मतलब क्वेश्चन कहां से है, मॉडरेट से है, मॉडरेट. और ये कहां से आता है, ये एक टॉपिक हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल में, अर्ली नेशनलिस्ट, जिसमें हम लोगों ने मॉडरेट, एक्सट्रीमिस्ट, पार्टीशन ऑफ बंगाल, स्वदेशी मूवमेंट, सूरत स्प्लिट, ये 4-5 चीजें पढ़ी थी. उसमें मॉडरेट्स में कई सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने पढ़ी थी. Who were moderates and what were their ideas and methods? What is the significance of moderate ideology? What is the failure? So 2 things that you need to understand right here. To what extent they are asking you to, write whether it created a base for the wider freedom struggle or not. See, you have to write both the things, the achievements also, plus critical analysis. ये 2 चीजें आपको इसमें लिख देनी है. See, if you try to understand, the moderates were called as early nationalists. See, the moderates, they were there from 1885 to 1905. And they played a very significant role in the, development of the Indian national movement. They were liberal people, and they were the people who belonged to different, class, and they were educated middle class, professionals who were lawyers, barristers, teachers, officials. Okay, and many of them, got education in England, and they played a significant role. Early nationalists, or you can say the moderates, were, very liberal people who believed in progressive ideas, and they were against the extra constitutional means. They follow the constitutional means, or they have the method of, motion, passing a motion or resolution, parliamentary form of, tools they used to use when they raised the voice against the British speeches and parliament, prayers and petitions they used. W.C. Banerjee, Rash Bihari Ghosh, Surinder Nath Banerjee, R.C. Dutt, दादाबाई नरोजी, गोपाल कृष्ण गोखले, फिरोज शाह मेहता, अलग अलग लोग, जस्टिस राणा डे, they were the moderates, and moderates played a very important role in the Indian national movement. This cannot be denied. First of all, we need to understand this. See, the moderates, moderates created a national awakening among the people. This cannot be denied. They created the national awakening among the people, and that they belong to, that the people belong to one common country, that is India. This made Indians conscious of the bonds of the common political, economic and cultural interest that has united India. The moderates were the people who trained people in politics by popularizing the ideas of democracy. They popularized the ideas of civil liberties. They popularized the ideas of secularism. They popularized the ideas of nationalism. But at the same time, we need to understand they failed also. But their role was very, very important. They were the people, who did the pioneering effort or pioneering work to, expose the true nature of the British rule. They were the people who were the part of, who gave the idea of economic nationalism. Imagine the people like Dadabhai Naoroji. He gave the theory of drain of wealth. He exposed the true nature of the British rule. He exposed the true nature of the colonial rule. Otherwise, who would have told us that we are being fooled by the Britishers for years together? So they made the people, realize the economic content and character of the British imperialism. By doing so, they weakened the foundations of the British rule in India. This is a very important thing. They have weakened the foundation of the British rule in India. Their political and economic programs, established the truth that India must be ruled, in the interest of Indians. Their efforts, the efforts of moderates, led to the appointment of the Public Service Commission in 1886. They raised the voice for Indianization of civil service. They were the people, who, because of whom a resolution of the House of Commons in 1893 was passed for holding the simultaneous exam for ICS in London and in India. Appointment of Welby Commission. Welby Commission was a commission which was basically on the study of the Indian expenditure in 1895. The Indian Council Act, passing of the Indian Council Act of 1892. These were the roles played by the moderates, which cannot be overshadowed. But at the same time, they failed as an organization. They failed. They could not achieve the goals. They could not achieve the goals. But they played a significant role in the political demands. The political demands were, the expansion of the legislative council with, more power and more representation to the Indians in the legislative council. Representation of Indians in the Indian Council of the Secretary of State, the Viceroy's Executive Council, the Governor General's Executive Council, separation of judiciary from executive. Who raised these demands? Formation of the Provincial Council, abolition of Indian Council, Indianization of civil service. Economic demands were there by the moderates, like the end of the economic drain, inquiry into the economic and industrial conditions of the country, reduction in land revenue, encouragement of the Indian industries through the by giving a direct aid by the government, introduction of permanent settlement in other parts of the country. There were military demands also, that repealing of the Arms Act, appointments of Indians, to commissioned rank, because, despite the valor and courage, Indians were not, Indians never used to go above the rank of Subedar in the Indian army, the British. Reduction of the military expenditure. Social demands were being done by them. More expenditure on welfare. Why? To spend more on war, to fulfill the imperial interest of the British. More expenditure. They demanded that British should spend more on welfare activities like education, health, sanitation, etc. Civil rights, like freedom of speech or thought or association, press, etc. should be given. Basic, human rights of Indian workers in South Africa, the Indians living abroad, in which, Gandhi also played a very important role in South Africa. So all these roles, who were playing? Moderates. Moderates were playing that role. The economic nationalism, the drain of wealth, theory given by Dadabhai Naoroji, the foundation of Indian National Congress, and the role played by moderates. Who were doing this? The founding fathers of the Indian National Congress was moderates. They played a significant role in raising the voice of the Indians. That is why the political achievements were credited to them for passing, the Indian Council Act of 1892. ICS exam to be held in India. Demand for Swaraj, birth of democratic ideas, birth of secularism, etc. Training of Indians into the political work. Economic critique of the British rule that was seen in the case of drain of wealth theory, and the very important, work of Dadabhai Naoroji, that is poverty and un-British rule in India. Economic history of India, that was written by R.C. Dutt, which is a very important book. Welby Commission on Indian expenditure. But at the same time, we need to also write that, despite these efforts, moderates could not, achieve the uphill task of, getting, getting freedom for India. The demand was dominion status that was denied. It is true that they played a very important role, but they failed because there was no mass mobilization. The moderates were confined to urban areas. They were confined to the middle class. They were not in touch with the peasants and the working class. And this happened when Gandhi came on the Indian political scene. This cannot be denied. So moderates were criticized. The methods, used by the moderates of, passing the resolution and, sending petitions were criticized by the extremists. They're dependent on the generosity of the British instead of relying on their own strength and challenging the imperial might of the British. The continuous conflict, the ideological conflict with the extremists, this was a very important reason for the failure of the moderates. That is why the Surat split that has happened, when the Congress got split and the moderates and extremists were parted off. They failed to realize that the British and Indians, Indian interests, they clashed with each other. So Britain was using India's, resources to increase the wealth. So the moderates failed to draw the masses, the mass support into the mainstream Indian national movement. They failed to attract the masses. Masses were not understanding the lofty ideals of French Revolution or American Revolution or the ideas of John Locke or Montesquieu or Kant, Rousseau, etc. आने को नहीं है उनके पास. Extremists were different from moderates. They were in the favor of boycott in Swadeshi. Moderates were not in the favor of boycott in Swadeshi. Moderates never wanted to, involve the masses in the Indian national movement. The reason was that they thought that masses had no idea about the true nature of colonialism. But Gandhi, he involved masses into the Indian national movement. He involved masses into the Indian national movement. What Gandhi was doing in local satyagrah that was launched in Champaran, Ahmedabad and Kheda, he became a local leader of the masses. And through Rowlatt Satyagraha, he became the pan-India leader. So their role was great, no doubt. So to what extent did the role of moderates? So you have to write that extent. At the same time, you have to criticize also. कि कैसे फेल कर गए वो. सो बहुत आसान है. दोनों पॉइंट लिखिए. 2 पार्ट में एक अचीवमेंट लिखिए, डिमांड वगैरह लिखिए. सेकेंड पार्ट में यू राइट द क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस. 2 things that you have to write here. So here I have tried my level best with my limited knowledge to make you understand the kind of question that UPSC has asked. So whatever I taught, without glorifying myself, and whatever I taught in the class in the offline and online mode, or whether it is in pen drive or other methods that was being provided to you by Drishti IAS, everything was there in the notes. And I hope this continues in future also. So I am sure that my students who appeared in the main exam, they were in a position, to write all the answers that was given in the notes, and in different parts I have made them understand and dictated them in the class, each and everything, and I'm sure they must have written the answer. और मुझे ये भी उम्मीद है बाकी लोगों ने भी अच्छे से लिखा. क्वेश्चन बहुत आसान था. There is no very big credit to be given to a teacher, because क्वेश्चन ही बहुत आसान पूछ लिया यूपीएससी ने इस बार हिस्ट्री में. पिछली बार से थोड़ा आसान क्वेश्चन था. एंड आई एम श्योर दैट जितने लोग भी अपीयर हुए एग्जाम में, whoever appeared in the exam, they must have performed very good. And I am sure, and I pray to Almighty God that everyone gets the call. Everyone तो मिलेगा नहीं, खैर ये बात है, लेकिन जो लोग अच्छे से लिख के आए होंगे उनको मिल जाएगा. जिनको नहीं मिला उनको अगले बार कॉल मिलेगा, and they will get the selection also. So I wish you all the best for the future exam, and I hope that you must have liked this session. Thank you so much. God bless you.